Okay, then. You're on.
Hi. Start 4th grade here. Reading Summer According to Humphrey, 4th chapter, Camp Happy Hollow. I wasn't too disappointed to discover that Robin's nest was not a nest at all. It was a little wooden house surrounded by trees and grass, and more trees and more grass. Here's our cabin, Miss Mac said as she gently lifted my cage out of the car. Looks nice, I said. My, the air smelled fresh, and I smelled something I had never smelled before. It was the scent of something wild. Outside, the cabin looked like a normal house with a covered porch. Inside, it was a room with 4 beds, actually 8 beds stacked on top of each other in pairs. Miss Mac called them bunk beds. Everything was made of bare wood, except for the red plaid curtains on the windows and the white sheets on the beds. Enjoy the quiet, Miss Mac said, after she had Og and me settled on the table by the window. She's thoughtful that way, and had given us both fresh water. It won't last long. Miss Mac cleaned up and left us alone. There we were, 1 frog, 1 hamster, 1 bare wooden cabin. No desks, no ringing bells, no shouting children. I missed them all. Kirk's corny jokes, Seth and his sports scores, Aldo's sweeping, Miss Brisbane's stories. I was even starting to miss Mrs. Wright, but not her whistle. What do you think of this place? I asked Og. Og splashed around in the water, but said nothing. I hopped on my wheel and began to spin. There was really nothing else to do. I tried looking out the window, but it was unsqueakably frustrating. All I could see was green wherever I looked. Green tree branches when I looked up, green grass when I looked down, green bushes straight ahead. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. There must be something else to see, I told Og. He splashed agreeably. So I jiggled the lock that doesn't lock, and the door swung open. I knew it would be difficult and dangerous to get down to the floor and outside, so for the first time ever, I climbed up the outside of my cage to get a little higher. I guess I surprised Og with this new behavior, because he let an alarmingly loud boing. Standing on top of my cage, I could look above some of the bushes blocking my view and see a teeny tiny bit more. There were several other cabins in sight, all of them just like the one I was in, and there were many paths that crisscrossed through the grass.
Mostly, though, there were trees and more trees. I was pretty sure there had to be more out there than trees. I knew there were birds because I could hear them singing. Thank goodness Miss Mac left the windows open. Then I heard people singing way off in the distance. I'm pretty sure I heard bongo drums playing, too. Mrs. Mac came in at night, but she went right to bed and got up very early in the morning. She did this a few days in a row. 8 beds, 1 human. Nothing much to do. Sometimes I would hear skitter, 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 and scritch, scritch, scritch. Who's making that noise? I asked Og one day when my curiosity got the best of me. Is it inside or outside? Boing, boing, said Og, leaping around his tank. I should probably check it out, I said, but I was almost wishing Og would talk me out of it. Skittering and scritching could be made by a number of different creatures, and some of them might not be too friendly. Still, I am a very curious hamster. Perhaps just a peek would ease my mind. With a lump in my throat, I jiggled the lock that doesn't lock. I was about to swing the door open when I heard footsteps approaching. I pulled the door back just as Mrs. Mac came into the cabin. She was wearing shorts and a shirt that had the words, Camp Happy Hollow, printed on the front. You must think I abandon you, she said. The thought had crossed my mind, especially when I heard that skittering sound, but I was too polite to mention it. But I was glad to have a reason to stay in my cage. I have been in training, she said. Things are about to start popping. My mind raced thinking about what kinds of things popped. Popcorn did, and sometimes balloons, which are a little scary for a small furry creature. Mrs. Mac lifted my cage ever so gently. I need to get you guys up to the hall to meet the rest of the crew, she said. I think you already know a couple of them. I was relieved to get out of the quiet cabin. Miss Mac carried me first, then Og down a winding path. We passed other cabins, like the robin's nest, then entered a much bigger wooden building with an even bigger porch and a big sign that said Happy Hollow Hall. Inside was an unsqueakably big dining room with long tables and benches. There was even a stage up front with heavy curtains on either side of it. We went through the dining hall, past the kitchen, and into the large room behind it. Miss Mack put Og and me on the table in front of huge windows that looked out on even more trees and grass. Sorry you've been cooped up in that lonely cabin. Sometimes Miss Mack seemed to read my mind. You'll like it better in here, in the rec room, and you'll be busy from now on.
Doing what? I squeaked. But she had moved to the door where she was talking to someone. Busy doing what, Og? I asked my neighbor. He wasn't paying attention. He was enjoying the waves in his tank created by our move. They made me feel a little seasick. I looked around the rec room. It didn't look like a wreck at all. There were couches and tables and chairs and a fireplace and bookshelves and cabinets. Oh, it was a cozy place. Meet our first campers, Ms. Mack told whoever was at the door. I scampered up the tree branch in my cage to see who was coming in, and I almost fell right off again when I saw, well, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Aldo. He was wearing shorts and a shirt with Camp Happy Hollow written on it, just like Miss Mack. Never fear, 'cause Aldo's here, he said as he rushed over to see Og and me. Aldo, what are you doing here? I squeaked in disbelief. I told you I was leaving town, he said. I didn't tell you I was coming here to be a counselor. And guess who else is here? He turned and gestured toward the doorway. Come here, honey. Suddenly, Aldo's wife, Maria, was standing in front of me, smiling happily. Maria's taking a break from the bakery to cook here for the summer, Aldo said. Maria worked nights in a bakery, while Aldo worked nights at Longfellow School. And I'm happy to say I helped them get together in the first place. It will be the best camp food ever, Aldo assured us. You guys are lucky this recreation room is so close to the kitchen. Oh, so the rec room was really a rec room, a place for games and fun. And I'm lucky that Humphrey and Og are close to me, Maria said with a twinkle in her eye. I have to do something with the extra fruits and veggies. Yum, I do love fruits and veggies. Og, on the other paw, likes ickier things, like crickets. More people came in. Ms. Mack called them counselors. Some were grown-ups like Aldo. Some were college students, and there were junior counselors who were high school age. Ms. Mack brought some of them over to meet me. It was hard to tell them apart because they all had on shorts and identical shirts. One of the college students, a young woman with short blonde hair called Katie, rushed over to see me. Oh, Morgan, he's so cute. He's the cutest thing I've ever seen. I liked Katie a lot. And there was Hap Holloway. He leaned down and put his big red face right next to my cage. Glad to have you aboard at my camp, he said in his loud voice.
His camp? Just try not to get eaten by a bear, he added, roaring with laughter. I didn't dare tell him that wasn't one bit funny. After all, it was his camp. It was very, very, very noisy in the room, with everyone laughing and talking. Then suddenly, it got very, very, very quiet. The quiet was broken by footsteps heading toward my cage. Do you think it's a good idea to have him here? A voice boomed. The way the voice said him was very familiar. I raced to the side of my cage to get a closer look. I knew it. It was Mrs. Wright, the physical education teacher, who liked rules more than hamsters. Let's face it, she loved rules, and she didn't like hamsters at all. I don't think she was very fond of frogs either. The kids will love them, Miss Mack said. I was proud of how brave she was standing up to Mrs. Wright. I braced myself, waiting for Mrs. Wright to blow her loud whistle, but she didn't. There are health issues, allergies, disease, she said. We're in the woods, Miss Mack said. There's lots of stuff to be allergic to. Then, to my surprise, Hap Holloway stepped forward. We've got medical histories and releases, he said firmly. We've got a nurse, too. She arrives tomorrow, and she'll sort out any health issues. You can concentrate on being activities director. Mrs. Wright was speechless, which was a first. I knew I was going to like Hap Holloway. Now it's time for pizza and singing, Hap told the group, and in the morning, the fun begins. Actually, I had a lot of fun that evening. Aldo and Miss Mack slipped me bits of lettuce and carrots from their salad, and I even got a teeny piece of pepper from the pizza. Katie played the guitar while Miss Mack pounded the bongos, and all of the other counselors sang amazing songs I'd never heard before. There was a song about a peanut on a railroad track, and another one about an alligator. There was something about ears hanging low, which Og probably didn't understand because he doesn't have ears, well, that I've seen so far. And my very favorite song was about a bucket with a hole in it. It got sillier and faster and faster, and silly old me, I was spinning on my wheel and almost fell off. The song was so funny. If the real fun was beginning tomorrow, I knew that I was going to like Camp Happy Hollow a lot, even if I didn't know who would be sleeping in all those beds. Note to self, humans tend to pop up where you least expect them, and some of them have whistles. Enjoy Chapter 5, it's coming next.